Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Coriol, where it's about 10 degrees. Not quite sure why we're tasting white wines today, but hey, here we are in very wet, wintry McLaren Vale, and we're going to taste some Chenin Blanc. 3 different wines and 3 quite different wines, and talk to you a little bit about why we have Chenin Blanc and perhaps why Chenin Blanc even exists here in McLaren Vale, which is a nice story in itself, in that it was really by accident that Chenin Blanc was planted in McLaren Vale. In that originally it was thought that the Chenin Blanc vineyards that had been planted probably 1860s onwards, so some very old vines. The thought was the variety was actually Albilo, which is a northern Spanish variety, a lesser variety, not grown a lot. And for 100 years or so, people produced sherry from the variety. And in fact, they didn't even call the vineyards planted to Albilo. Albilo, they just called it sherry, and it was the generic term. But it wasn't until the 60s, I think it was the late 60s, that the variety was correctly identified. An ampelographer, so a person whose job it is to identify grapevines, came through the region and sort of set the record straight. There was probably some other things that he found wrongly identified, but yeah, Chenin was one of them. But the time was about right, because it was at that time that people were moving, or there was interest finally again in dry table wine as opposed to sherry or port fortified sweet wines in the late 60s, and so there was some apparently it was a big deal at the time that Hardy's produced a couple of Chenin Blancs that were varietally labelled as Chenin Blanc, which was rare or new, and vintage dated, and also dry, so no residual sugar and no fortification. So, and those 2 wines, I think they were in 70 and 71, caused a bit of a stir at the Adelaide Wine Show, and I think it was at that point that our grandfather was looking for a new variety to plant, and I don't even think Chardonnay was available.
No, probably not.
To plant. So there was Riesling and maybe Doradillo and maybe 1 or 2 others, but suddenly there was this source of Chenin Blanc, and so we planted. Well, we didn't. My grandparents planted in 75 what we term now the Optimus Vineyard, which is on the site here, and it's really been our principal white variety since then. So it's had quite a long history with us, and so we've got 3 different wines that we're going to look at today.